This is gonna be a special Hexenhammer episode is all I can say right now.
The man is Heinrich Kramer, and he is writing the most blood-soaked book of the 15th century, the Malleus Maleficarum, the Witch's Hammer, a book that would torment the world for a century after its release, and be responsible for the torture and death of 70,000 innocent people.
Treating of three necessary concomitants of witchcraft, which are the devil, a witch, and the permission of Almighty God.
He goes on to say that female empowerment would bring on the apocalypse. He even made the title of the book Female, to hammer home his point. Malleus Maleficarum is a hammer used only on women.
So, we must find the mark. We must find the mark.
Greetings, fellow worker slaves podcasting at 128 kilobits from the Fortress of Squalitude, located not far from the Redneck Mecca. This is the Atheist in the Trailer Park podcast. I'm your host, Tucker. Professor Fuzznuts is around here somewhere, but he's not bothering me at the moment, so we're going to leave it at that. Not talk too loudly about him, so he doesn't come and attack me. Lord Squeakington glared at me earlier today, before slinking over to the food I put out for him. Yes, it's a podcast hosted by a guy and his cats. Get over it. And this is a Hexenhammer episode where Skullbeard and I read some selections from the Medieval Witch Hunting Manual. Next episode will be a news episode. And I have to say, well, this episode does not have any bird's nests or baskets filled with dicks. It does not disappoint in weirdness in a number of areas. I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to title this episode, but Extra Toast Edition does spring to mind as a possible title. Because, man, there are literally sections where we're going along and we're reading and we're like, wait, we just read this. Did we fuck up? No, we did not fuck up. Whoever wrote the original text or translated it or whatever, it just took like something from 2 paragraphs ago and repasted it. And at one point, I'm like, oh, fuck it. Y'all know where this is going, so I'm not reading the rest of this paragraph. I mean, there are, you know, from the sense of, well, yes, I like to know how warped they were when it came to the idea of witches. There's things worth listening to, but also there's things it's like, what are you, fucking nuts, man? You're just repeating the same shit over and over again. Both of us do address this in different manners at different points in the process of reading this nightmare. As for what's been going on around here, well, kind of got some good news, kind of need some advice. I will start with the thing that leads into me needing some advice, and then I'll get to the good news. Okay, so you remember me mentioning, hey, there's this gal at work, kind of looks, not bad looking, reminds me of an ex. And then we have a conversation, and she makes a mildly racist comment, and I'm like, just gonna kind of cross her off the list of potential dates. So one day last week, I go into work, and there this gal is, and she's wearing a t-shirt that says, "My politics are pro-God and pro-life." Yeah, if her mildly racist comment hadn't been enough to cross her off my list, that t-shirt certainly would have been. However, today I go to work and they give me this job where I'm in a position that I'm really visible to people in the plant. This is no big deal. It's not a hard job. It's not, it's not like they're putting me there because they want to keep an eye on me. They just put me there because it's a temporary thing until they can sort out some other stuff. And I'm like, whatever, I don't care. So I'm doing the job, and that gal, and I'm focused on my work, and in the half-hour overlap, that gal comes up and uses the trash can next to my spot. And she's definitely doing it to make sure that I know that she's there, because she's emptying her dustpan very, very slowly. And when I look up from my job and I see her, I'm like, "Oh, hi." And she's immediately perks up, "Hello." So it's, and I am just like, yeah, okay. Because it was a very fake pretend, "Oh, I didn't realize you were working here, and I just happened to be taking 3 minutes to dump out a dustpan that, it takes 2 seconds to dump out." And I'm just like, I need a way to, not be an asshole, but just say, "Sorry, honey, not interested, because you're a fucking Republican." And I'm not. And, I'm thinking, somehow there needs to be a passive-aggressive way that I can do this, because, America. And so I'm like, I need some kind of t-shirt that I can wear that will signal, "Yeah, honey, you don't waste our time. Go shack up with some Republican person and leave me alone." Okay? Because, and I don't want to be a dick. I don't want to be confrontational. I just, it's like, I'll just, no. I'm sorry, but no. No. You're, yeah, I know. People can change their minds and stuff like that. But I'm not interested in trying to change your mind or anything like that. And so, if you've got suggestions for a t-shirt subject, I need to find my ancestor t-shirt that I have, and see if it's clean. The My Ancestor t-shirt, there was some kind of Jack Chick comic that, in pre-pandemic times, gained popularity again because it had a date in it that was, I think, like 2017 or something like that. Anyways, there was something about the comic and whatever year it recirculated in the world that were tied together in some way. And it had like the schools, if atheists ran them, and there was some kid in the comic that had a t-shirt that had a drawing of a monkey's head, and it said, "My ancestor," on it. And people thought that was really fucking funny, and they made t-shirts of it and sold them. And I have one around here somewhere, but I don't know where it is. That might be enough to get her to, stop being friendly to me. If I were to wear to work a shirt that had the kind, the whole, what is it? Like that sign that says, "In this house we believe love is love," and, the whole sort of the liberal platform of, we don't give a shit if you're gay or whatever, as long as you treat people with respect, blah, blah, blah. That would run afoul of rules at work. And I'd be the asshole for wearing that. But, people who can wear the thin blue line t-shirts and shit like that, that's okay. Because I live in Tennessee. And even though we're not supposed to wear political stuff, that's not considered political because reasons. And I mean, think about this. You can wear, at my job, even though you're not supposed to have any kind of political comments, you can wear a t-shirt that says you're pro-God. If I wore a t-shirt in there saying, "I'm an atheist," or "I'm pro-atheism," I would get in trouble for that. You can wear a t-shirt that says you're quote-unquote pro-life, and let's remember, you're not really pro-life, you're pro-forced birth. But if I were to wear a t-shirt that says, "I want abortomatics on every corner," I'd be the asshole. I thought about maybe, getting a t-shirt with like Divine on it, or say a Keith Haring painting on it. But I don't know if that would really get the point across. Because probably a lot of people here have never heard of John Waters or seen one of his early films or heard of Divine. And, the Keith Haring thing, well, you have to have an explanation. Somebody said, "Well, that's a really nice painting." Yeah, it is. And the artist who did it died of AIDS because the government under Reagan didn't give a shit about people with AIDS. That's a little verbose. Now, however, let me give you some good news. On Saturday, the local Democratic Party had their annual fundraiser picnic. I went, and we had a record turnout. There were close to 100 people there, which is really big for almost every local Democratic event I've been to. The only events that I've been to that have had a larger turnout have been the big fundraising event that they have once a year. Right before the final primary, so that they can raise lots and lots of money to support the candidates coming up in the general election. So, every other event I've been to, unless it was that big which they call the 3-star dinner, has had, maybe 40 people at most on average. And this one we had somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 people or more show up. We also had 7 of the candidates running for local, state, and national office in this area. That's not all the candidates that are running, but that's the bulk of them. Obviously, there's, some repetition because 3 of the candidates were all vying with one another over, getting the primary nomination. But that is fan-fucking-tastic. That is the most we've had in 20 years, according to people who have been involved with the local party for a very long time. And it is... another thing that I noticed is that most of the people there were folks I hadn't seen before. I counted maybe 20 people whom I knew one way or another. That's not including the candidates, most of whom I already knew or had met. So that's a really, really good sign. And again, I live in a blood red state in a supposedly blood red county. So if we can do it here, you can do it in your location, no matter how red you are. Because trust me, this has been a major, major shift. And if we're lucky, the Democrats will really hammer away at this bullshit the Republicans are doing, not merely here, but elsewhere, in regards to things like abortion. Because that's going to get a lot of votes, guaranteed. Okay, that's enough of my blathering. Let's get to more of Skullbeard and I reading from Hexenhammer.
Yeah, whatever. I got a 3-day weekend and my wife is out of town, so... Woo!
Yeah, so, why does the dead lady get a holiday?
I don't know, because she was Queen Victoria. And she may have been historically important, but more importantly, it's May 24. Which is when you're supposed to go camping and eat barbecued food and get wasted in the woods, but I can't be fucking bothered.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I set the grill on fire this evening.
Uh-oh.
Yep. I was thinking I probably need to clean this, but I can cook one more thing on it.
Uh-huh.
Didn't burn the food too badly.
Was it a protein or
had
propane?
To break out the old fire extinguisher and put it out.
Oops. Propane barbecue?
Yep.
Okay, I used actual briquettes because my propane barbecue rusted away to nothing.
Oh well, I have both, but everything takes me like 4 times as long as it used to, so I just don't have time to fire up the goddamn charcoal thing.
Yeah, it took forever. It took way longer than I expected to burn them down to, hey, I can cook on that.
Yeah. And I've got a nice one. It's a smoker barbecue grill. So
Okay.
I've got, a firebox, and I can use that as a grill. And then I've got the big smoker box, and I can use that as a grill or a smoker.
Mm-hmm.
So that's nice. And I discovered that buying grill covers is absolutely pointless.
Yeah, I never really found a use for them.
Yeah, well, I've never found them to stay on for very long.
It does get a little breezy around here, so yeah, I get it. We did have a funnel cloud warning today, so that was fun.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. For being in the middle of an epic drought, it's been pretty fucking rainy.
Yeah. Well.
But that won't help us come August.
It's been really weird here because normally April is just like monsoon season here. You know, It just rains constantly. But we've gotten more rain this month than I think we did this time last month.
Yep. That's kind of what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
good times.
Did you hear that the president of Iran is most likely dead?
Oh, I just heard that his helicopter had a rather hard landing.
Yeah, well, they've gotten to where they can see the chopper. And they're like, well, you don't see any signs of life.
Huh. Okay, what a timely occurrence.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not somebody I'm going to shed a tear over.
No, not particularly.
Well.
Kind of hope somebody a little less hardline comes in, but you never know.
Yeah, well, you know, there's enough chaos. All kinds of things could happen.
Yep. Seems to be that kind of a lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I'm giving up, I think, on one of the news podcasts I regularly listen to because they just started reading out a whole bunch of Russian propaganda.
Oh, yep.
I mean, literally, they're like, this is what Russia Today is saying about this. And I'm like, why are you reading this?
Uh-huh.
I could understand you saying, hey, these are the kinds of things they're saying, and, you know, summarizing it. But they read, like, headline after headline.
From Pravda and Sputnik and...
Yeah. I'm like... So.
Okay.
You know, and they weren't doing any... Because it was all about the kids protesting what's going on in Gaza.
Yep.
And they weren't giving any context to, you know, when the kids started protesting and when these things started appearing.
Yep.
They were just making the implication that, the kids are only upset because, you know, the Russians are telling them to be upset. No. No, I think 13,000 kids being murdered might have something to do with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, if they don't like it, they can go to university in Gaza. Except there aren't any anymore.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. We have had encampments at 2 universities, one in Edmonton, one in Calgary. And they were brutally crushed by the police. Like you do.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
Yep.
Somebody, I forget who it was, got a hold of all these text messages from billionaires to the mayor of New York saying, we'll pay for you to go in and break up the protests.
Uh-huh. That doesn't surprise me.
Why?
Ridiculous. Concerning the method of causing these illusory transmutations, it may further be asked whether the devils are then inside the bodies and heads of those who are deceived, or whether the latter are to be considered as possessed by devils, how it can happen without injury to the inner perceptions and faculties that a mental image is transferred from one inner faculty to another, and whether or not such work ought to be considered miraculous. And if I'm not mistaken, that was one fucking sentence.
Yeah, it was. Well, maybe two, because there's the colon.
Well,
unless it's a semicolon.
Well, there's a colon, and then there's two semicolons.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll call that 4 distinctly separate thoughts packed into one fucking sentence.
Yeah. First, we must again refer to a distinction between such illusory glamours. For sometimes the outer perceptions only are affected, and sometimes the inner perceptions are diluted and so affect the outer perceptions. I'm afraid he's going to tell us what that all means.
I'm pretty sure he won't. It'll be clear as mud. In the former case, the glamour can be caused without the devil's entering into the outer perceptions and merely by an exterior illusion, as when the interposition of some other body, or in some other way, or when he himself assumes a body and imposes himself on the vision.
But in the latter case, it is necessary that he must first occupy the head and the faculties, and this is proved by authority and by reason. I'm going bet it ain't.
Proved is doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
Well, so is authority and reason.
Yeah, well, that's true. And it is not a valid objection to say that two created spirits cannot be in one and the same place, and that the soul pervades the whole of the body. For on this question there is the authority of St. John Damascene, when he says, where the angel is, there he operates. And St. Thomas, in the second book of Sentences, Distribution, Dispatch 7, Article 5, says, all angels, good and bad, by their natural power, which is superior to any bodily power, are able to transmute our bodies. Okay, I'm not calling that proof of any kind.
Oh. And this is clearly true, not only by reason of the superior nobility of their nature, but because the whole mechanism of the world and all corporeal creatures are administered by angels. As St. Gregory says in the fourth dialogue, in this visible world nothing can be disposed except by an invisible creature. Therefore, all corporeal matters are governed by the angels, who are also called not only by the holy doctors, but also by all the philosophers, the powers which move the stars. Man, I've known some philosophers, and you really do not want to give them that much credit. I know their egos think they are the powers which move the stars, but no.
No.
It is also clear from the fact that all human bodies are moved by their souls, just as all other matter is moved by the stars and the powers which move them. Any who wish may refer to St. Thomas in the first part, question 90, Article 1.
Ain't proved shit yet. From this it is concluded that since devils operate there where they are, therefore, when they confuse the fancy and the inner perceptions, they are existing in them. I got the devil in me.
Again, although to enter the soul is possible only to God who created it, yet devils can, with God's permission, therefore God is a dick, interrupt bodies. Ooh, see? And then make impressions on the inner faculties corresponding to the bodily organs. No, I did not misread that. That is exactly how it is written. And by those impressions, the organs are affected in proportion as the inner perceptions are affected, in the way which has been shown that the devil can draw out some image retained in a faculty corresponding to one of the senses, as he draws from the memory, which is in the back part of the head, an image of a horse, and locally moves that phantasm to the middle part of the head, where are the cells of imaginative power, and finally to the sense of reason, which is in front of the head. Which is in the front of the head. There we go.
Okay, so they got 1 out of 3 right. The prefrontal cortex, the front part of your brain, is where you reason and can predict consequences of your actions, which is why people with some traumatic brain injuries are a little bit impulsive.
Yeah, or and it's why lobotomies. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
exactly.
What they cut that part of the brain off, and yeah, and he causes such a sudden change and confusion that such objects are necessarily thought to be actual things seen with the eyes. This can be clearly exemplified by the natural defect in frantic men and other maniacs. Right, but the problem is you're not ascribing the cause to what is the actual source. You know, like, say, maybe ergot poisoning.
Y'all are tripping balls. But if it is asked how he can do this without causing pain in the head, the answer is easy. For in the first place, he does not cause any actual physical damage in the organs, but only moves the mental images. And secondly, he does not effect these changes by injecting any active quality which would necessarily cause pain, since the devil is himself without any corporeal quality, and can therefore operate without the use of any such quality. Thirdly, as has been said, he effects these transmutations only by a local movement from one organ to another, and not by other movements through which painful transformations are sometimes caused.
Like maybe mushrooms. And as for the objection that two spirits cannot separately exist in the same place, and that since the soul exists in the head, how can a devil be there also? It is to be said that the soul is thought to reside in the center of the heart, in which it communicates with all the members by an outpouring of life. An example can be taken from a spider which feels in the middle of its web when any part of the web is touched.
It's a nice analogy, but it's not very accurate, I would say. I still want to know, what is a soul? What is it made of? Where is it? What's it good for? How much can I get it for it on eBay? You're not allowed to sell souls on eBay anymore. Thanks, Hammond.
Yeah, I know. Jerk.
However, St. Augustine says in his book, On the Spirit and Soul, that it is all in all, and all in every part of the body. Granting that the soul is in the head, since the devil can work there, for his work is different from the work of the soul. The work of the soul is in the body to inform it and fill it with life, so that it exists not merely locally, but in the whole matter. But the devil works in such a part and such place in the body, effecting his changes in respect of the mental images. Therefore, since there is no confusion between their respective operations, they can both exist together in the same part of the body. What? That didn't make a hell of a lot of sense, but whatever.
Two souls, one cup.
No! Too soon.
There is also the question whether such men are to be considered obsessed or frenzied, that is, possessed of devils, but this is considered separately, naming whether it is possible through the work of witches for a man to be obsessed with a devil, that is, that the devil should actually and bodily possess him. And this question is especially discussed in the following chapter, since it has this special difficulty, namely whether this can be caused through the operation of witches. Now, I've got a question.
Uh-oh.
In the Evil of Dead movies,
Okay.
Ash gets his hand possessed,
Yep.
and then he chops it off.
Yep. And it prevents
Is that-
the rest of him from being possessed, yes.
Is that kosher according to this guy or not?
I don't think that's canon.
Oh.
But as to the question whether the temporal works of witches and devils are to be considered as miracles or of a miraculous nature, it is to be said that they are so, insofar as they are beyond the order of created nature as known to us, and are done by creatures unknown to us. But they are not, properly speaking, miracles, as are those which are outside the body or created nature, as are the miracles of God and the saints. See what was written in the first part of this work, in the 5th question, in the refutation of the 3rd error. No.
I was just about to say that same thing. Nope, 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 nope.
No, I've already been there. I'm not going back.
Yeah, like the aliens on Sesame Street. Nope, 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 nope.
Yeah.
But there are those who object that this sort of work must not be considered miracles, but simply works of the devil, since the purpose of miracles is the strengthening of the faith, and they must not be conceded to the adversary of the faith, and also because the signs of the Antichrist are called lying signs by the apostle.
And of course they are. Which apostle? Does it say?
I'm waiting for the link to load. St. Paul.
2 Thessalonians 2:8-9. Okay, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to bother to look that up. First, it is to be said that to work miracles is the gift of freely given grace, and they can be done by bad men and bad spirits up to the limits of the power which is in them. Okay, so an orange man can be a modern day David? No. Cyrus? Never mind.
Yeah. Wherefore, the miracles wrought by the good can be distinguished from those wrought by the wicked in at least 3 ways. First, the signs which are given by the good are done by divine power in such matters as are beyond the capacity of their own natural power, such as raising the dead and things of that sort, which the devils are not able to accomplish in truth, but only by an illusion. So Simon Magus moved the head of a dead man, but such manifestations cannot last long. Secondly, they can be distinguished by their utility, for the miracles of the good are of a useful nature as the healing of sickness and such things, but the miracles done by witches are concerned with harmful and idle things, as when they fly in the air or benumb the limbs of men, or such things, and St. Peter assigns this difference in the Interarium of Clement. Don't ask me what that means, but
what the hell is an itinerarium? Is that a room where you keep your
I think it's like
itineraries?
maybe a travel log.
Pseudo-clementines. So it's a kind of fruit.
Well, it's weird. What's his name before he went? Robert Price. Itinerarium is an ancient Roman travel guide.
Okay.
Robert Price, before he went bugfuck,
Yep.
he said that there was evidence, and he wasn't the only biblical scholar who thought this way, that Simon Magus was actually a parody of Paul that certain believers put into the New Testament, but I don't remember the details.
Okay. Yes, I do remember him being respectable at some point and then the cheese slipping off his cracker.
Yeah, shortly around the time Trump
Yep.
ran for office.
Curiously enough. The third difference relates to the faith, for the miracles of the good are ordained for the edification of the faith and of good living, whereas the miracles of the wicked are manifestly detrimental to the faith and to righteousness. All right. Here I thought it was just like, here's a new film and it works really good in dark light. See, here's a picture of Mother Teresa. Hey, it's a miracle!
Oh! And that reminds me.
Mm-hmm.
That meme, I think you saw it that I posted of, that was supposedly photographic proof showing that the ancient Egyptians actually built the pyramids.
Yes.
And it was a still from one of Cecil B. DeMille's silent movies.
Mm-hmm.
And it got me thinking. Well, if aliens could teach the ancient Egyptians how to build things like the pyramids, how hard would it be to teach them to do photography?
A pinhole camera?
You got a pinhole camera.
Mm-hmm.
The Egyptians kind of knew a thing or two about chemistry.
A little bit, yeah.
They knew how to make paper.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Hey, it's not that far out of the realm of possibility.
Mm-hmm.
It could happen.
And, okay, so they are distinguished also by the way in which they are done. For the good do miracles in a pious and reverent invocation of the divine name. But witches and wicked men work them by certain ravings and invocations of devils.
I'm going to go with yeah, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
And there is no difficulty in the fact that the apostle called the works of the devil and Antichrist lying wonders. For the marvels so done by divine permissions are true in some respects and false in others. They are true insofar as they are within the limits of the devil's power, but they are false when he appears to do things which are beyond his power, such as raising the dead or making the blind to see. For when he appears to do the former, he either enters into the dead body or else removes it, and himself takes its place in an assumed aerial body, and in the latter case he takes away the sight by a glamour, and then suddenly restores it by taking away the disability he has caused, not by bringing light to the inner perceptions, as is told in the legend of Bartholomew. Indeed, all of the marvelous works of Antichrist and of witches can be said to be lying signs, inasmuch I've never heard that word before. Insasmuch. As their only purpose is to deceive. See St. Thomas whatever 8 de Juritute Daemonum.
I thought Insasmuch was a Canadian province.
No. Lying wonders, 2 Thessalonians 2:8-9, the wicked one, blah blah blah, whose coming is accorded of the working of Satan in all power and signs and lying wonders. Okay, yeah, sure, whatever.
Yeah. We may also quote here the distinction which is drawn in the Compendium of Theological Truth between a wonder and a miracle. For in a miracle, 4 conditions are required: that it should be done by God, that it should be beyond the existing order of nature. Well,
some supernatural shit going on there, yeah, okay.
Between the padre and the choir boy. I mean, by their definition, that is beyond the existing order of nature.
Mm-hmm.
Damn. You know somebody's used that.
And probably, yeah.
Thirdly, that it should be manifest all over her face.
Yeah.
And fourthly, that it should be for the corroboration of the faith. But since the works of witches fail to fulfill at least the first and last conditions, therefore they may be called wonderful works, but not miracles.
Uh-huh. Oh, come, all ye faithful.
And then when you hit puberty, they call that song Adeste Fideles for some reason.
I wonder why.
Mm-hmm.
It can also be argued in this way, although witches' works can, in a sense, be said to be miraculous, yet some miracles are supernatural, some unnatural, and some preternatural. And they are supernatural when they can be compared with nothing in nature, or in natural powers, as when a virgin gives birth. I just call bullshit. I reject the premise.
There are, I guess, in a number of Latin American countries, there have been a number of instances where fights have broken out over who was the father of the pregnant virgin's child.
Mm-hmm. I'm shocked. They are unnatural when they are against the normal course of nature, but do not overstep the limits of nature, such as causing the blind to see. And they are preternatural when they are done in a manner parallel to that of nature, as when rods are changed into serpents, for this can be done naturally, also through long putrefaction on account of seminal reasons, and thus the works of magicians may be said to be marvelous. Or it just could be a little sleight of hand and parlor tricks, but let's not tell them.
And in fact, there is a species of Egyptian snake that when you pinch it behind the head, becomes paralyzed.
Mm-hmm.
And, the head folds down, the body is stiff, so it looks like a staff.
Yep.
And that was probably a common trick.
Mm-hmm.
It is expedient to recount an actual example and then to explain it step by step. There is a town in the Diocese of Strasbourg, the name of which it is charitable and honorable to withhold, in which a workman was one day chopping some wood to burn in his house. Okay, now...
I'll bet she's got a girlfriend in Canada. You wouldn't know her.
Well, here's the thing. You want to chop wood and let it dry in season before you try to burn it.
Yep.
A large cat suddenly appeared and began to attack him. And when he was driving it off, another even larger one came and attacked him with the first more fiercely. And when he again tried to drive them away, behold, 3 of them together attacked him, jumping up at his face and biting and scratching his legs in great fright, and as he said, more panic-stricken than he had ever been, he crossed himself and, leaving his work, fell upon the cats, which were swarming over the wood and again leaping at his face and throat, and with great difficulty drove them away by beating one on the head and another on the legs and another on the back. After the space of an hour, while he was again engaged upon his task, 2 servants of the town magistrates came and took him as a malefactor and led him into the presence of the bailiff or judge. And the judge, looking at him from a distance and refusing to hear him, ordered him to be thrown into the deepest dungeon of a certain tower or prison, where those who were under sentence of death were placed. The man cried out, and for 3 days bitterly complained to the prison guards that he should suffer in that way when he was conscious of no crime. But the more the guards tried to procure him a hearing, the more furious the judge became, expressing in the strongest terms his indignation that so great a malefactor had not yet acknowledged his crime, but dared to proclaim his innocence when the evidence of the facts proved his horrible crime. But although these could not prevail upon him, yet the judge was induced by the advice of other of the other magistrates to grant the man a hearing. So when he was brought out of prison into the presence of the judge, and the judge refused to look at him, the poor man threw himself before the knees of the other magistrates, pleading that he might know the reason for his misfortune. And the judge broke into these words, "You most wicked of men, how can you not acknowledge your crime? At such a time, on such a day, you beat 3 respected matrons of this town, so that they lie in their beds unable to rise or move." The man cast his mind back to the events of that day and that hour, and said, "Never in all my life have I struck or beaten a woman, and I can prove by credible witnesses that at that day at that time on that day I was busy chopping wood. And an hour afterwards, your servants found me still engaged on that task." Okay. So,
Dude's
none of these witnesses saw him being attacked by cats?
Apparently.
Then the judge again exclaimed in a fury, "See how he tries to conceal his crime? The women are bewailing their blows, they exhibit the marks, and publicly testify that he struck them." Then the poor man considered more closely on that even and said, "I remember that I struck some creatures at that time, but they were not women." Oh.
Mm-hmm.
The magistrates in astonishment asked him to relate what sort of creatures he had struck, and he told, to their great amazement, all that had now concerning this it may be asked. I have no idea. There's like a chunk of text missing, I think. Whether the devils appeared thus and assumed shapes without the presence of the witches, or whether the witches were actually present, converted by some glamour into the shapes of those beasts. And in answering this, it should be said that, although it was equally possible for the devils to act in either way, it is rather presumed that it was done in the second manner. For when the devils attacked the workmen in the shape of cats, they could suddenly, by a local motion through the air, transfer the women to their houses with the blows which they received as cats from the workmen. And no one doubts, I guess that's supposed to be no one doubts, that this was because of a mutual pact formerly made between them. For in the same way, they can cause injury or wound in a person whom they wish to bewitch by means of puncturing a painted or molten image which represents the person whom they wish to injure. Many examples of this could be adduced.
Yeah, that cool story, bro.
Yeah, I'm having trouble figuring out why the devils couldn't have protected the women from being hit.
The whole story really makes sense. The whole story makes no sense. At least he didn't call somebody bald. And it cannot be validly objected that perhaps those women who were so injured were innocent, because according to previously quoted examples, it is shown that injuries may happen even to the innocent, when someone is unknowingly hurt by a witch by means of an artificial image. The example is not apposite, for it is one thing to be hurt by a devil through a witch, and another thing to be hurt by the devil himself without any witch. For the devil receives blows in the form of an animal and transfers them to one who is bound to him by a pact, when it is with such an one's consent that he acts in this manner in such a shape. Therefore, he can, in this way, hurt only the guilty who are bound to him by a pact, and never the innocent. And when devils seek to do injury by means of witches, then, with the permission of God, for the avenging of so great a crime, they often afflict even the innocent.
So,
whatever.
Yeah, so God's like, sort of, kill them all. I'll sort them out.
I'll sort them out later, yeah.
Nevertheless, devils at times, with God's permission, in their own persons hurt even the innocent. And formerly they injured the blessed Job, although they were not personally present, nor did the devils make use of any such illusory apparition as in the example we have quoted when they used the phantasm of a cat, an animal which is in the simple scriptures an appropriate symbol of the perfidious, just as a dog is the symbol of preachers. For cats are always setting snares for each other.
Yeah, I have never seen a cat set a snare.
No. And the order of preaching friars was represented in its first founder by a dog barking against heresy.
Now I wanna be a dog. Yeah.
What's that, Lassie? Timmy's talking about heresy?
Uh-huh.
Timmy fell down a heresy.
Yep. Therefore, it is presumed that those three witches attacked the workmen in the second manner, either because the first manner did not please them so much, or because the second suited more with their curiosity. I'm confused.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the order which they observed. First, they were urged to do this at the insistence of the devils, and not the devils at the insistence of the witches. For so we have often found in their confessions that at the insistence of devils who constantly spur them on to commit evil, they have to do more than they would. And it is likely that the witches would not, on their own account, have thought of attacking the poor man.
The devil made me do it.
Yeah.
But God gave permission, so it's all good. And there is no doubt that the reason why the devils urged them to do this is that they knew well that when a manifest crime remains unpunished, God is the more offended. The Catholic faith is brought into disrepute, and the number of witches is the more increased. Secondly, having gained their consent, the devils transported their bodies with that ease which belongs to a spiritual power over a bodily power. Thirdly, having in the way which has been told... Thirdly, having in the way which has been told them... Okay, this sentence makes no sense. Thirdly, having in the way which has been told being turned into the forms of beasts by some glamour, they had to attack the workmen, and the devils did not defend them from the blows, although they could have done so just as easily as they had transported them. But they permitted them to be beaten, and the one who beat them to be known, in the knowledge that those crimes would, for the reasons we have mentioned, remain unpunished by faint-hearted men who had no zeal for the faith. Zealots. Zealots and crazy persons who can't write a complete and coherent sentence.
Yeah, and I just gotta say, I'd rather be locked in a dungeon than beaten with an axe and chopped with an axe, you know?
I suppose.
We read also of a certain holy man who once found the devil preaching in the form of a devout priest, preaching in a church, and knowing in his spirit that this was the devil, observed his words, whether he was teaching the people well or ill, and finding him irreproachable and inveighing against sin, he went up to him at the end of the sermon and asked him the reason for this. And the devil answered, I preach the truth, knowing that, because they are hearers of the word only and not doers. God is the more offended, and my gain is increased. Happened as we have related it. Something's missing there. So, understanding that it was the work of the devil, they released the poor man and let him go away unharmed, telling him not to speak of this matter to anyone, but it could not be hidden from those devout persons present who were zealous for the faith. So Vaguely, this makes those folks, who were at the, judges at the Salem witch trial even more wrong, because they said, oh, well, the devil can't say the Lord's Prayer, and one of the poor saps who was executed at the Salem witch trials started repeating the Lord's Prayer just before they killed him, because he thought that would keep them from killing him.
Yeah, well, there's no dealing with zealots, sorry.
No.
Now, concerning this, it may be asked whether the devils appeared thus in assumed shapes without the presence of the witches, or whether the witches were actually present, converted by some glamour into the shapes of those beasts. And in answering this, it should be said that, although it was equally possible for the devils to act in either way, it is rather presumed that it was done in the second manner. For when the devils attacked the workmen in the shape of cats, they could suddenly, by local motion through the air, transfer the women to their houses with the blows which they received as cats from the workmen, and no one doubts that this was because of a mutual pact formerly made between them. For in the same way, they can cause injury or wound in a person whom they wish to bewitch, by means of puncturing a painted or molten image which represents the person whom they wish to injure. Many examples of this could be adduced. So they're doing a little voodoo?
Yeah.
You do that voodoo that you do so well?
Yeah, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm.
And it cannot be validly objected that perhaps those women who were so injured were innocent, because according to previously quoted examples, it is shown that injuries may happen even to the innocent. Okay, so why worship a god that allows that shit? When someone is unknowingly hurt by a witch by means of an artificial image. The example is not apposite, for it is one thing to be hurt by a devil through a witch, and another thing to be hurt by the devil himself without any witch. For the devil receives blows in the form of an animal and transfers them to one who is bound to him by a pact. Have we not read this?
It seems to be redundant and repetitive and redundant, so.
Yeah. When it is with such an one's consent that he acts in this manner in such a shape. Therefore he can in this way hurt only the guilty who are bound to him by a pact, and never the innocent. But when devils seek to do injury by means of witches, then, with the permission of God, again, why worship him? Mm-hmm. For the avenging of so great a crime, they often afflict even the innocent.
Yeah, what's a little collateral damage?
I'll sort them out later.
Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, devils at times, with God's permission in their own persons, hurt even the innocent, and formerly they injured the blessed Job, although they were not personally present, nor did the devils make use of any such illusory apparition as in the example we have quoted. When they used the phantasm of a cat, an animal which is, in the scriptures, an appropriate symbol for the perfidious, just as a dog is the symbol of preachers. I'm sure we've read this before.
Yes,
I'm having some severe deja vu and I think I smell toast, okay? For cats are always setting snares for one another, in the order of preaching friars was represented in its first founder by a dog barking against heresy. I'm thinking there's some bad editing going on in this book.
Dattery's paid by the word.
Padding things out a little. Yeah.
It's like, I don't know if you've ever read them, and if you haven't, I don't recommend that you do. But the Gore, G-O-R series of novels.
No, I have not. Thank you.
Are you familiar with them?
I don't believe so, no.
They're sort of like a knockoff version of Conan.
Okay.
And they're really popular among libertarian types for some reason. I've never read them, so I don't know why, but I know the only people who've ever praised them have all been libertarians, so that should tell you something right there. But anyways, one of the guys who was telling me about the books had this complaint that, like, there was a certain flower that was really important, and I don't remember if it was just in one of the books or if it was in all of the books. But every time, just about, that flower was mentioned, there was a whole, 2-page description of it that was verbatim. And it drove him nuts, but I'm like, yeah. The phrase proletarian novel writing machines comes to mind.
That's it for this episode of the Atheist in the Trailer Park podcast. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes. It's also on Stitcher, and most of the episodes are on YouTube. Follow the show on Twitter at tparkatheist, and it's on Facebook at facebook.com/trailerparkatheist. You can email me at trailerparkatheist@gmail.com. Show notes can be found at tparkatheist.blogspot.com. If you happen to like the podcast, please rate it on iTunes. If you'd like to donate to support the podcast, there's a donate button on the show notes page. You can also support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/TNTucker.
The podcast, there's a donate button on the show notes page. You can support it via Patreon at patreon.com/TNTucker. Thanks for listening.
Say goodnight, Fosnuts.
All I know is this violates every canon of respectable broadcasting.
Damned cat.